Hello everyone. In this video, I am going to talk about Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath was a renowned American poet, novelist, and prose writer. She was born in Boston, in Massachusetts, in America in 1932. From a very early age, she started writing poems, and her poems were published in the school magazines. Then she enrolled herself in Smith's College, where she came under the influence of Robert Lowell, who was a teacher. And Robert Lowell also influenced Anne Sexton, another great poet. Now, while discussing about Robert Lowell's poetry, Rosenthal first used the term confessional poetry. Now, by confessional poetry, it is generally meant that in those poems, the poets reveal their inner feelings straightforwardly, talking about social taboos, their cravings for freedoms, etc. And the confessional poetry are compared with raw materials, and the general poetry is compared with the cooked ones. So, Robert Lowell had a great influence on Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton also, and both Sylvia Plath and Anne Sexton unfortunately committed suicide. Now, Sylvia Plath was 8 years old when her father, Otto Plath, who was an entomologist in Boston University, died. Now, Sylvia Plath had a great admiration for her father and she loved him deeply. So she said that I will not talk to God after this. But as he grew older, she developed some psychiatric problems. She had suicidal tendency. She tried to commit suicide a couple of times. But she also continued to produce poems, novel. Well, she had written one novel. Uh, it is named Bell Jar, and it talks about uh, Green Esther's mental struggle. It was first titled as The Diary of a Suicide, and it is called a pot boiler, a novel with a key. And she also composed some prose writings like the Johnny Panic and the Bible of Dreams, Letters Home, which are actually published posthumously. Many of her poems actually published posthumously. And she was also awarded the Pulitzer Prize in 1982. That was also posthumously. And she was the first one to get it so. And she ultimately committed suicide in 1963 at the only age of 30. And she was married to Ted Hughes, the renowned British poet, but uh, they were divorced. Ted Hughes actually deserted her for another woman, and Ted Hughes, according to her, used to beat her, used to laugh at her, uh, did not care about her talent, her poetry, her writings. So they had a very difficult relationship. The writings or the poetry that made her famous are the Colossus and other poems, which was published in 1960. Well, it had 45 poems, including a poem of the same name, Colossus, It definitely meant her father, who was a larger than life figure to her. And then the Ariel, which was published in 1965 posthumously, Winter Trees, Crossing the Water, they were all published after her death. In Ariel, there are several famous poems. Ariel was actually the name of her horse she used to take for morning ride. So the poems are about dawn, about the resurrection of soul, and the famous poems included in that collections are Lady Lazarus, Tulips, Daddy, and there is a famous poem in Winter Trees called Parda. Parda is quite familiar to Indian. Parda means curtain. So the poem talks about the suppression of women's rights, uh, about snatching away her liberty, trying to put her behind the curtain. But after the 11th stanza of the poem, the narrator or the speaker became a lioness. So she got the liberty. And her famous poem is Daddy. Now, I will try to give a brief introduction to the poem Daddy. The poem was written in 1962 after her divorce with Ted Hughes. It is called the Guernica of modern poetry. The Guernica was a famous painting of Pablo Picasso. It had uh, complex and contradictions. So has this poem. Now, while talking about the poem, Sylvia Plath told that it was written from an Electra complex perspective. Her father was of German origin, a Nazi, and her mother, Aurelia Plath, was of Jewish origin. So when she get older, when Sylvia Plath got older, she trapped between these two identities. So there is an apparent contradiction in the poem. And in this poem, the personal and the social merges together. Personal means now Otto Plath, Sylvia Plath's father, was a very authoritative person. She married Sylvia Plath's mother Aurelia, who was 21 years junior to him, and Aurelia had to leave her teaching job to work as the assistant of Otto Plath, who was doing his PhD on insects and later published the books on bumblebees. But later Otto Plath developed diabetes and had to amputate one of her one of his feet. So Sylvia Plath brought these images. She loved her father deeply and had a kind of Electra complex. Electra complex was the in case of male it was Oedipus complex. In case of women or ladies it was Electra complex. Uh, and so this genuine feeling, this genuine admiration for her father was later started to decrease as she got older because she started to realize that she was living under a fake illusion of security, and she was searching for this fatherly affection, this fatherly protection all the time, only to be disillusioned. So the personal autoplath is related to her husband Ted Hughes, and she herself could relate to her mother, Aurelia Plath. So, as Otto Plath suppressed the career of her mother, Ted Hughes also tried to do the same. Ted Hughes also laughed at her poetry, used to burn her writings, used to beat her. So she wanted to get rid of that patriarchal figure, that fatherly figure. So she used the image of black shoe as if she is confined under it, but she does not want to stay there any longer, and she compares her father-like figure with Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf was the autobiography of Hitler. Mein Kampf means my struggle. So the Nazi character, the nuances of Holocaust, the inhuman treatment meted out to the Jews came into her mind, and her father became the representative of the Nazi, and her mother was the representative of Jews. So that social feeling was also there, and she tried to get rid of it, as well as the protection, the illusion of a kind of protection, fatherly protection. So she had to kill her father. Now, when she was 8 years old, her father had already died. So she cannot literally kill her. So she had to kill her by her language, linguistically. Now, her father used to speak in German most of the times, but she tried to uh, come out of it. She tried to speak English fluently, and she could speak English fluently, but she also knew many German words. So she said that she had to kill two of them. By killing one, by killing her father, she could kill the influence of Otto Plath as well as her husband Ted Hughes, who also provided her a sense of fake security at the beginning, but later she was disillusioned. So she was trying to find out the liberty, the freedom, the strength of the woman to take on the world on her own. And for this, she had to get rid of the fatherly figure. She called her father a vampire, and at the end of the poem called her a bastard. And she also used the swastik emblem. Swastik emblem was the emblem of Hitler's concentration camp, the Nazis concentration camp. So he merges the personal note with the social note. Her personal feeling of getting out of that illusion of protection of a fatherly figure, and also the inhuman treatment that was given to the Jews by the Nazis in the Holocaust. She tried to uh, get over that feeling. So, this was the basic theme of the poem Daddy. Thank you for watching.